Okay, next we have Dr. Miriam Grossman. Is Dr. Miriam ready for us? Okay. Dr. Miriam Grossman is a practicing physician, author, and public speaker. Before gender ideology was on anyone's radar, she warned parents about its falsehoods and dangers in the final chapter of her 2009 book about sexuality education. You're teaching my child what? Dr. Grossman's practice currently focuses on gender-confused young people and their parents, and her forthcoming book, Lost in Trans Nation, A Child Psychiatrist's Guide Out of the Madness, arms parents with the ammunition to avoid or, if necessary, fight what many families describe as the most difficult challenge of their lives. Parents will learn what to say and how at home, at school, and if necessary, to police when they appear at the door, or what to say to police when they appear at the door. She believes that every child is born in the right body. Welcome, Miriam.
Oh, great. You can hear me and you can see me. Fantastic. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to do this virtually. I'm sorry that I can't join you. I would have loved to have been there. There's so many people there that I would love to meet. I'm not there because I am finishing up my book. And the reason why it's so hard to finish, I must tell you, is because every day I open up my computer and there's more emails from parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and siblings who are joining the ranks uh, of the wounded due to this terrible ideology. And with every email that I get and every additional story that I hear, I just think, I have to add this. This has to be part of my book. How can I not tell this story? How can I not report on this additional piece of news? And so I'm getting to the point where my publisher is saying, Miriam, this is not an encyclopedia. You can't tell every single story that is coming to you. Anyway, so I'm not in Austin because I'm working on my book. As you heard a moment ago, I became aware and warned parents about gender ideology way back in 2009. And the moment that I recognized in sex education that kids were being told that there's something called a gender identity, which is completely separate from biology, and that they were being told if your gender identity does not match your biology, this is normal and just a variety of human expression. And I knew at once that this was going to be a very dangerous thing. Now, unfortunately, it took this terrible, catastrophic epidemic of gender confusion that we're in the midst of right now for people to become aware, for parents to become aware of that this was going on. And in many cases, as you know, it's been too late. Now, my focus, of course, I'm focused on kids. I have a private practice of young people and their parents. Of course, just like everybody else, I'm focused on helping the children and figuring out the best way to protect them. But more recently, my focus has been on parents. And the reason for that is because of the hundreds and hundreds of parents that I've talked to, I've realized the terrible trauma that this experience has been for them and still is. And I've recognized that many parents have traumatic syndromes, and I don't call it post-traumatic stress syndrome because it's not post, because it's still going on every day, every month, for years. And so it's not like someone who's on the battlefield and they come home with trauma from watching their buddy being blown up. It's not like that. It's a kind of stress and a kind of trauma that is nonstop and seems to have no end. In addition to that quality of it, it's different from other forms of stress and loss because it is not acknowledged by the greater society, by the medical community, by the mental health community. To the contrary, parents are held responsible for their children's distress. So the whole thing is upside down. And I've become very committed to telling parents stories and to raising awareness about the parents' trauma. So I was recently interviewed on Jordan Peterson's podcast, and I tried very hard to keep the discussion focused on parents. And one of the stories that I told Mr. Peterson was that I was speaking to parents on a podcast, on a Zoom a few years ago, and I was acknowledging to them that my profession, the mental health profession and the medical profession, had failed them. And we failed them in so many ways. And we were in part responsible for all the trauma that they were going through, because gender therapists dismiss parents. Gender therapists think that they know better than parents. They know the child better after sitting with a kid for 20 minutes. They believe that they know better than the parents who have been raising the child for 15 years. And then the gender therapist says, if you don't affirm your child in their new identity, your child may commit suicide. So they put it on the parent. These are terrible things that are going on. And I felt that I needed to connect with the parents and let them know that there was at least one therapist out there that was on their side. And they saw this as a terrible travesty, what was going on. And so while I was speaking to the parents, I noticed on the Zoom, on the grid of all the different cameras, that many had turned off their cameras. And I didn't know why that was until later on when I discovered that they had actually been crying. They were crying out of relief and gratitude for being acknowledged, for being seen. So I told this story on the podcast to Jordan Peterson, and I spoke more about parental loss and parental grief. And lo and behold, I've been flooded with emails since that podcast from people saying, you know, I listened to you on Jordan Peterson and I was crying as to listen to you. And, you know, I'm starting to feel like I'm making everyone cry. I mean, that's not my intention. My intention is not to make everyone cry, as you know. My intention is to wake people up, especially people in my profession, which is the medical profession and the mental health profession. My intention is to hold the gender medical establishment responsible for the harm they are doing and responsible for their allowing a small group of vocal activists, gender activists, to take over the professional organizations. One of the things that I want parents to know is that when their child comes to them and announces a new identity and demands that the parents use a new name, new pronouns, and basically consider them to be a new person, that is one of the most difficult things that a parent could ever face. And when you add to that the isolation that parents feel, not only from the rest of the world, the schools, the pediatrician, the media, politicians, their friends, possibly their families, possibly their own spouses, that emotional isolation is another huge stress on top of dealing with the confused child. Emotional isolation can lead to physical illness. And in fact, I just spoke to a parent recently who told me that she believes that her husband's heart attack was due to his emotional isolation and grief as a result of what happened with their daughter. Emotional contact is essential for health. So I want to remind any parent that's listening in the audience to please remember to take care of yourselves. Of course, you're taking care of your child, but you must take care of yourselves as well. And my mission is to bring that message about the parents to the world, to make psychiatrists, psychologists, and counselors and social workers aware of the harms of the narrative that they are now upholding. And I will continue to do that for as long as I can.